Hey, down here.
Welcome back everyone. What was the most you've ever lost on a game of cards? A round of drinks? Your prized shiny Vaporeon? Maybe your soul? Inscription is a single-player digital card game published by Devolver Digital, which gives you some idea of what it's like. Pixel art, violence, characters that are either miserable and or insane. You know, the Devolver staples. It does, however, differentiate from other Devolver titles due to being their first published card game. The easiest and probably most reductive summary of it would be to describe it as most like Yu-Gi-Oh! By way of Hearthstone. Not so much magic or cultist sim. It could be similar to Pokemon, but I've never met anyone who's actually ever played a game of that TCG, and neither have you. Anyone you know who claims to have is, in fact, merely puppeting the long-deceased flesh of your former friend. Do not make eye contact and keep silver on you at all times. Inscription presents a fairly straightforward goal. A strange shadowy being looms over you, providing you with a deck of cards, primarily of forest animals, and invites you to beat him, taking you on a journey across a tabletop much like a DM, taking on other personas and providing other opportunities to advance your deck. The games within the game are played utilising two decks, one of creatures and one that contains only squirrels. These have no attack and with only a single health would otherwise be completely useless if not for the fact that they're free. Unlike your main deck, which will require sacrifice, you can throw as many squirrels at the problem as you have the rabies shots for. Basic creatures will only require a single other creature as sacrifice, while more powerful ones, like wolves, ravens, Ouroboros the Devourer of Worlds, and elk require two. Later, you may also get ones that require 3 or even 4 creatures to be sacrificed. Given you only have 4 total slots for creatures on your side of the board, you'd have to sack an entire board just to summon it. Luckily, there are ways to make this easier. But now, grab a squirrel, a stoat, and slam the bell to have your creatures attack. Ignore his judgmental advice.
Total
He
misplay.
rarely has anything of value to say.
Hey, I heard that, you fetter prick.
Rather than a traditional health pool, life points, or cum resistance, you have a set of scales. Any damage done to your opponent is placed onto the scales, as teeth. Don't worry, they're not yours, yet. You win if you do 5 damage without taking any yourself. The same is true for your opponent, so any damage you take will neutralise damage you've done. Any overspill of damage gets collected as currency that you can spend later. If the scale gets tipped entirely to your side, you lose a life, represented by the 2 candles. Snuff both, and the same happens to you. This will happen to you. The shadowy figure does not play fair, and by not fair I mean cheats like a Japanese housewife in an NTR doujin. I hope you're like 8 simultaneous grizzly bears, you fucking casual. The game expects you, and pretty much forces you, to lose. Several of the game mechanics will only be explained to you after you've died at least once. Firstly, a secondary summoning system, utilising bones. When a creature is killed, you get a bone, and much like in real life, these can be used instead of blood to summon creatures to do your bidding. Upon your first death, you also gain access to your death card, a unique card formed from others in your deck. These are used to decide its cost, power, and keywords, all for the low price of your soul. So yes, this does mean you can make a creature that has 3 attack bifurcated strike, be played for free on the first turn, and beat almost every enemy in the game in 1 turn. And every boss in 2. And quite frankly, you should. The Shadow Man isn't playing fair, why should you? Hell, make 2 god cards, so you have a better chance of drawing them. Make the idea of paying 2 blood for a 2 attack creature reserved purely for the weak and ignorant. There is one 2 blood card worth using, and that is Ouroboros, as every time it dies, it gains +1/+1, permanently. A 4/6 grizzly, how quaint. Observe, Exodia. Now give it the bifurcated strike sigil. Now I realise I didn't actually explain what sigils even are. They're basically keywords in any other game. You know, flying defense, death touch, immortal, musky husky. There's a lot to pick from, but how they work are fairly straightforward. You can right click a card at any point to check what they do. Usually, assuming it hasn't been redacted. If it is, it's probably either very powerful or very weird. Where they get fun is combining. You can sacrifice 1 card permanently to give its sigils to another. This is not only a good way to get rid of cards you don't want, but make a good card even stronger. More importantly, you can create some absolutely broken combos. A Mantis God with 5 attacks? Sure, why not? Wolf Pup a bit delicate before it evolves? Well, now it can dodge. Hell, even expensive cards can be more useful if they get summoned from your hand without having to pay their cost. And if you manage to pull off this combo, congratulations, you've won. Not every card is built equal, but some that seem useless at first may surprise you later. Before you can face the man himself, you must make it through 3 maps. These consist of mutually exclusive nodes to progress across, each with a boss at the end. Most of these will either be matches against him, or opportunities to modify your deck. In addition to the regular fights, there are also totem battles. Essentially harder fights with a totem upon the field that gives all of his cards in a specific tribe an extra sigil. Outside of the tutorial, this is mostly random, so if it actually makes it any harder is up to the RNG gods. The other nodes have much greater variation. I've already mentioned the sacrifice altars, but you can also find a woodcarver that will give you a totem, campfires that buff your card's power or toughness, at the risk of being eaten, a trial that if passed grants a massively buffed card, a trapper that you can purchase furs from, which can later be exchanged with a trader for much more powerful cards, at the cost of bloating your deck with trash until you reach her. You can even silence a certain overly judgmental weasel.
Hey, wait, no.
Certain nodes will also let you pick side items. These are one-time use, but persist between games if not used, and can really help you out if the RNG is feeling stroppy. These include emergency squirrels, scissors to remove a card directly, pliers to remove and also this! It's actually useless. The Shadow Man may cheat, but even he has its limits. As if we didn't just get rid of one overly talkative sidekick. I'd advise to always keep one below max, as if you run up to this node with a full pack, you'll be given a pack rat card instead. It's mid. At 2 blood it's expensive for what it is, but its sigil can save you in a pinch. So better off sacking it to transfer it to a cheaper creature. Honestly, 1 isn't too bad, just don't hit it too many times or your deck will start to look like London at 3 AM. You actually want less cards in your deck, as if you're building around a couple particularly strong cards, you want to be able to draw them as often as possible. But do beware, getting milled is still an issue. At the end of each map is a boss. Each is a different mask worn by the Shadow Man, taking on various personas, some of which you may have encountered along the way, which may give you a hint as to how their mechanics will work. What makes the bosses a lot harder is instead of the 2 lives you get in the regular map, here you only get 1. And he gets 2. You should have known they weren't going to play fair. But if you play it right, learn how their bullshit works, and bring your own brand instead, they are beatable. You at least get any of your snuffed candles relit afterwards, and the choice of 3 rare cards. These range from super powerful, to interesting, to what I can only assume is a dig at a half-forgotten mascot platformer. If you have the option for Mantis God, take it, they're the best. The game knows they're the best. If you get a fireplace that improves attack, they go from an already good 3 damage a turn for 1 blood to 6. Meaning that you don't actually have to play most encounters. Hey, if you're feeling lucky or previously served them Taco Bell, why not go for 9? And if that was all there was to it, I could probably still recommend this as a fun, if deliberately unfair, single-player card game. But I've been hiding a lot of the game for you, so let's stretch our legs. This isn't only a card game. So let's talk story. Of note, when you start the game, you do not have the option for a new game, only to continue. This boots you straight into being trapped in the cabin, but if you're not directly in a match, you can just get up and walk around the cabin. Here there are various puzzles and other items to interact with. There are extra teeth in the skull if you're running short, totems, hints, he'll even talk to you at various points. Extra cards can be found around the cabin and added to your deck, including a second card that can talk. There are in fact 3, but the final requires more work than just reading the first page of a book. Importantly, they let you know that there is a way to beat him and win back your freedom. But for that, you'll need to find some extra items and build a very strong deck in order to stand toe-to-toe with him. Your talking cards will also give mostly unhelpful advice.
Hey, remember, wolves come in pucks.
You can pretty much ignore anything the stoat says after the wolf turns up. The other 2 are more supportive. All of them seem to be hinting at something greater going on behind the scenes. Something about old data and Carnoffle. They seem to also have some history with the Shadowy Man. It'll probably take quite a few tries and some good luck with deck enhancements to get to him, but once you do, you're not out of the woods. Quite literally, you are in them now. You still only have 1 life, and if you lose it, it's all the way back to the start. And rather than 2 rounds you need to win with a normal boss, he has 3. If you think he's suddenly going to start playing fair, think again. Okay, so there is some more to talk about once you beat him, as you can probably tell by the video length, but if the game looks interesting enough to you, I'd recommend going in blind and seeing for yourself. You can either stop the video here and go buy it, or skip to this time. Right. Beating Leshy isn't going to be enough. As you should have expected at this point, he will just do whatever he likes and game end you regardless. Instead, you'll need to solve the puzzles around his cabin to get the special knife. To beat him, sacrifices must be made. In the clock, you'll find the final talking card, but more importantly, the spare roll of film for Leshy's camera, the one he's been using to steal your soul. Once you beat all 3 phases and grab the camera, you steal his soul. Yeah, there he is. How's it feel to be the card now, asshole? On the other wall, beside the pile of corpses, is the missing new game option from the main menu. All you need to do is just reach out and take.
Hey there, card gamers! I'm the Lucky Carter, and this is another pack opening video. Today, I am opening Catch Monsters packs and digging for that epic...
No, hold on, you didn't accidentally autoplay to a different video. This is part of the game. This is Luke Carter, and he's actually the one that's been playing this whole time.
I think I just beat him! Oh.
There's a couple of times he's interjected over the game, which you've not seen up until now because I've not shown them.
How is this game not over yet?
Once you beat Leshy, you gain access to some of the recorded footage from Luke's camcorder. There's quite a few, so I'll give you the cliff notes. He's one of your usual bottom-of-the-barrel card unboxing channels, who one day scams some old lady out of her dead daughter's unopened inscription packs. Upon these, he finds coordinates for some woods nearby and digs up a floppy drive, which, after a week of waiting for a floppy drive to turn up, because, be honest, how many people do you know who still has one? He then starts a new game and starts recording what you've just played. I've got a good feeling about him. I'm sure things will work out well. So that's all well and good. So now you can hit the new game and... This doesn't look like the game we were just playing at all. Welcome to Act 2. The second half of the game begins with an intro scene describing the 4 scribes, each of whom have the power to create cards, and the one, you, who will challenge and replace one of them. Your options are Grimora, who writes epitaphs for the dead, fairly standard goth bitch, PO3, who scans robots' cores to work out which are the most efficient to mine cryptocurrency on, and Magnificus, who paints portraits of his underage students, as it doesn't violate child safety laws if they are now a playing card. The fourth you already know, Leshy, who uses a camera to photograph beasts of the forest, which include wolves, bears, and apparently sharks, I guess. If you hadn't already realised, the other 3 are the talking cards from Act 1. As they mutated over time, they had started to look more and more like their original selves. Knowing how they behaved in Act 1 also gives you a hint as to what they were like as scribes. Magnificus is wise and noble, P03 is an arrogant prick, Grimora smells bad. You must pick one to replace. This doesn't actually matter as you can change your choice later, but it does matter for picking your starting deck. Each of them has their own unique mechanics. Leshy's you already know. Beasts require sacrifice of blood to summon. Grimora's you also already know, as she used the bones for her cards in the manner you played with in Act 1. Really, Leshy? Not enough to steal people's souls, huh? You're gonna go steal people's gimmicks too? P03 uses the mana crystal system from Hearthstone. As the scribe of technology, he uses a system from a purely digital card game. Finally, Magnificus uses magic. Sorry, that should be magic, as in, you need mana tokens called mocks for each creature on the board. I recommend PO3 or Grimora, but honestly any of them are fine except Magnificus. Given you only have 4 slots on the board and draw 1 card a turn, having them taken up by needing mana just kinda sucks. I don't know, your mileage may vary, but I've never found them good. Maybe I'm just bitter from people trying to convince me that Commander is somehow a fun game type. I know you're watching this, Will. You know what you did. Once you pick a starting deck, you can head around the island to defeat the scribes. You'll only have access to 2 at the start, Leshy and Grimora, but once you've defeated one, the other 2 will open up. Before you can face them, you'll need to dispatch a few minions and solve some relatively easy puzzles. I'll admit I did have a bit of a bird brain moment trying to solve Leshy's safe. The combination is written on the floor outside, but for some reason my brain just couldn't recognise this as a 7, so I ended up just brute forcing the combination with the 2 numbers I could read. Not my finest moment. Each enemy you beat also gives a card pack, which you can use to modify your deck outside of the battles. As you go along, you'll even get cards that cross over between deck types, although it's best to only keep to a couple of types. Really just not Magnificus's garbage. The money you get from Overkill is now foils instead of teeth. These actually serve more of a purpose now, as you can use them to buy new card packs, or specific cards from a vendor in each zone. Each boss once again has 2 lives and their own unique brand of bullshit, but unlike earlier, if you lose the match, you lose the match. Wow, crazy. You don't have to start all the way over from scratch, which also leads to Act 2 being significantly easier and shorter than Act 1. If you fail a fight because of bad card draws, you can just do it again right there. The only real stumbling blocks I hit, outside from the aforementioned inability to read, were Magnificus as he wipes out your card sigils, but just throw a bunch of value stat line cards in and you'll probably be fine. And Grimora, as she starts with a tough creature on the board and also wipes your entire side of the board after you take her first life. After you beat all 4 of the scribes, you can return to the start and select the one you wish to replace. Okay, I lied, this is only the halfway point of the game. Second spoiler warning. Again, go to here if you want to go in blind, but less blind than the people who left earlier. Okay? Who you pick doesn't actually matter, as P03 will show up and steal the limelight anyway. The fight he puts you in doesn't really count as a boss fight, as he'll just play the old data fished up earlier. It was right there the whole time. Hitting this corrupts the game, making the console and screen go wild, and making P03 turn himself into a vaporwave background. Before the game finally fades to black. And we're back. Once you awake, you're back in the land of 3D. Basically P03's equivalent of, or perhaps better to say, squatters' rights in, Leshy's cabin. Everything now has a sci-fi theme to it, including the cards, map, and scales. P03 now being the one to force you to play. Most notably, you are now cuffed to the table. This probably makes P03 the cruelest villain in all of fiction, as being locked to a table in the same room as a Yu-Gi-Oh player might just be my own personal idea of hell. P03 as a scribe made cards by copying the data of robots, and in much the same way the map he gives you is a copy of Act 2. He's not even subtle about his lack of creativity, he's making it up as he goes along. Once again you have 4 bosses to defeat. However, how the fights work is a bit different to previous. Your board now has a whole 5 lanes! Wow! If you played with P03's cards in Act 2, then you know what to expect. You have an energy bar used to summon that increases by 1 and replenishes each round, up to a maximum of 6. You can no longer, and no longer need to, sacrifice your cards. But you can whack them with a hammer if they're in the wrong place, or just for general disobedience.
Bailiff, whack his pee-pee!
Instead of squirrels, you now have empty vessels, which start out almost completely useless as you no longer need them for summoning. But they get upgraded with each boss that you defeat, making them into quite the useful utility. By which I mean, get this on them as soon as you can, as it will instantly turn your deck into a ramp deck and honestly make Act 3 probably the easiest of the 3. This, combined with new cards like the sniper bot that you actually aim the attack of, and the new way of upgrading your deck that is mostly through granting extra sigils, you can really start to make some broken cards quickly. Not that the punishment for failing is particularly harsh here. It's not no punishment like Act 2, but also not the complete ball ache of starting over you had in Act 1. Instead it's Dark Souls. Dying only does financial damage, and respawns the enemies in the close area. You can then just go pick it back up. Incidentally, rather than teeth or foils, you now use Robucks. Robobucks. You can also fast travel from any of the bonfires. Actually, what do I mean? I don't remember what these are called. Anywho, they let you travel to a shop at the centre of the island. Here you can buy more sigils, card packs, and other junk. You now have only 3 possible items: an energy refill, armour, and a board wipe. They're all pretty useful and come back at each bonfire, but honestly, besides the refill, I didn't actually need to use any of them. There is also a bounty system, whereby the greater a volume of Dogecoin you accrue, stronger bounty hunters will be sent after you. But we've got snipers with death touch, so it's the JFK special for you, I'm afraid. At a certain point, P03 will release you from the table to run errands for him, as he lacks the legs and opposable thumbs to actually do it himself. His area is actually the same as in Act 2, complete with the puzzle terminals you have to solve. The real reason he's getting you to do it is that they're all variation on captures, and he's a robot. The goo student, Gooden, is back and squatting in the tubes. You have this thing to flash ping you on demand. And fish! The most interesting part of Act 3 is actually the bosses. Each Uberbot has unique mechanics that play with meta aspects rather than just cheating like the previous parts. Not that they don't cheat, but it's more for the sake of making you engage with their mechanics than just, My favourite of this is Grimoire's equivalent, the Archivist, who asks you for access to your hard drive. In the first phase, whenever you kill a creature, you get to pick from your files, and do damage based on its girth. I know my videos are nigh unwatchable, but this is probably the first time they've killed anyone. The second phase uses the file's age to make a card stat line. Lucky for me, I'm a digital hoarder. What made me want to bring up this fight in particular is that should your creature die, so does your file. I hope it wasn't something important. He sends you to go fetch more items. This allows you to use magic in conjunction with your cards, and gives you access to new card packs that involve magic. Unfortunately, at this point I already have a deck that can beat anything, so I'm just not. P03's replacement is also another I want to bring up, as she revolves around the internet, utilising your Steam friends list and giving you a random card from the internet. This is made in the second phase and sent off to someone else. If they win their round, you do too. Unfortunately, this does require someone else to be playing the exact same fight at the exact same time as you, so in the 3 times I've repeated this for this video, I've only actually got it to work once. All the other times you just get given the card instead. So hope you didn't make something trash to fuck someone over with thinking it wouldn't be you. I mean, who would do that? If you've made it this far, you probably don't care about spoilers, but here's another one in case you suddenly find that you do. And it's gone, let's continue. P03 sends you out one last time, and the final capture check that required the internet can now be completed, dropping you through the trapdoor. Waiting for you is the other 3 scribes, united to stop P03 who has been planning to escape the game through the internet. They then send you back, and you journey back to the start with P03 stating that he's actually enjoyed his time with you somewhat. He talks directly to Luke, gloating. You know, your typical villain, I'm smart, you're dumb, you never even comprehended my plan, yada yada yada. Well, comprehend these hands, robo-slut. With that, Grimoire then deletes the game. I suppose you could call this an Act 4. When you awake, you sit in a crypt. Behind the door is Grimoire. Your time left in the game is running out. Albeit slowly, the game is running off a floppy disk, so you've got some time before the, let's be generous and say 250 kilobits write speed can erase all the files. She's not around long enough to be worth going into mechanics, but her aesthetic is nice. And she even has a boss fight. Oh well, GG old lady. Next is Leshy again, however he's very different from the last time you played him. Greeting you as a friend now, just happy to be playing with you again. Not even caring about keeping score, hoping to just eke out one more round before everything is wiped from existence. And him along with it. I'll miss you too, man. Finally, Magnificus, who challenges you to a final great game of, Unity Asset Saw Yu-Gi-Oh! Luckily he gets deleted fairly quick, so you don't actually have to sit through 400 HP's worth. With that, you're kicked back to the Act 2 sprite. Wandering a white void, the scribe mentions that there's nothing much left and that you should close out, but knows you won't. Going back up, well... Back in Luke's camcorder, he's freaking out. While he's trying to figure out what the hell just happened, Game Funa sent him a Nintendo-style cease and desist. And that's it. Roll credits. Confused? Well, I'm sure you are. What was the old data? The Carnoffel code the characters wouldn't dare speak of. Who was Casey? Who is this? Well, if we're in this deep, in order to piece together what the hell was actually happening, we need to look in 3 places. Firstly, in the game itself, the camcorder footage between acts, hidden areas, and the trader in Act 3 will give you some of the best information in exchange for hollow pelts. More direct information can be found in Casey's mod. I'll discuss it in its own section, but TLDR, you get it for beating the game and it contains increasingly difficult challenges. Each rewards you with a snippet of lore, and 30 odd deaths later we can piece together most of the story taking place within the bounds of Inscription and with Casey. But there is a lot more going on outside of the bounds of the game, both in the context of the game and in the real world. So let's talk ARG. The old data is more than a plot device used to turn the game 3D. You can actually decrypt it using 3-part encryption keys. These you get from solving various riddles. And you're going to have to bear with me as this is where things start getting complicated in what's actually needed to solve them. For example, one part of one of the hints is 23K2F!00R. This in fact is split further into 2 hints. 23K2 refers to Carnoffel again, specifically the ancient card game that Luke is researching here, and the sticky notes on the corner of his monitor. The pig represents 2 in Carnoffel. So, obviously, if you play Douse, Mantis God, Rat King, and another Douse, their names will change to spell stop. The second half, F!00R, is just floor in Leetspeak. Except it's not, it's roof. You did see this here, right? Well, we're still not done, as this is just the hint translated. You'll need to find what it means, which is the 273 from here, and the number of missing planks from each side of the roof, giving you the full answer of stop 27341.
That is number 1! Well done!
Did I say complicated? I mean completely psychotic. And this is just one of the 3-part keys needed to decrypt the old data. 3 times. As much as I'd love to say I worked this out on my own, this was solved by a collaborative effort of the community. I've linked the full Google Doc that documents the entire process below. The whole thing took months of effort, partially because it stalled waiting for people to obtain floppy drives, as who in their right mind still has one of those. So, do we have everything we need? Nope, there's still more, as some of what's going on isn't even related to Inscription at all. Instead is in the other previous games, Pony Island and Hex. But with all of that included, we have enough. This will be more of a cliff notes, as the spoiler section is already going to be twice as long as the other part, but here goes. Okay, so back in ancient times, the devil made an ancient artifact of great evil, utilised through organising a set of Carnoffle cards. The Carnoffle Code. Don't worry about the whole devil thing for now, he's trapped somewhere. I don't know, probably Elephant and Castle, it's not important. Anyway, the Nazis, yeah those ones, got their hands on the code and used it to build a bomb that could blow up half of Europe. But they never used it, as they lost the war shortly afterwards. The cards were buried with the chief loser himself, and once again forgotten about. Until the next Great Powers War, that being the Cold War, where the Russians cracked open Hitler's grave like a cold one, but rather than use old cards, they loaded it onto the new and exciting medium of the day, fucking floppy disk. This is what we know as the old data. It's actually Satan's superweapon. It has some will of its own, albeit kind of subtle. Think of it like the One Ring. Just don't spend too much time around it or you'll turn either evil or dead. Satan then breaks free and finds himself in America. Luckily he's quite low on power, so can't do too much. In order to maximise evil output, he starts a game company called Activision Blizzard. Game Funa. He's not that bad. He also renames himself to Lou Natas. Luckily he's working in the video game industry where terrible names are particularly common, and as such no one bats an eye at someone essentially calling themselves Lucifer Satan. He then starts manufacturing a card game, as few things facilitate human suffering the way they do. He called it Inscription. Back in Russia, the disc is stolen by an American agent after learning what power it may possess. But getting it out of the country is going to be difficult. So he starts working with two others. One is a data storage manager named Kaminsky out of Poland, who was able to get the floppy disks out by camouflaging it with thousands of other identical disks. These were then sent to none other than Game Funa, where they were used to load copies of the Inscription video game onto. At Game Funa, a QA tester named Casey finds that one copy seems to be acting strange. Characters are performing actions they were not supposed to. It seems the angler fished up part of the old data and gave it to Leshy, who used it to imprison the other three scribes in cards, and then turned the game 3D. She loves it, and starts playing with Leshy, but her boss, Satan, and Mr. Kaminsky also start hunting her down when they realise they were too busy rigging the Pokemon market and lost where they'd put the disc with the ancient evil superweapon on it. Mostly because Casey had since stolen it to play at home and start developing her own mod, but she starts to discover about the old data's power and the superweapon hidden under Berlin. She considers destroying it, but either through love of the game or its corruptive power, hides it in the woods instead, writing the location on some cards. Satan then hits her with an order to cease and desist from the mortal plane. Unfortunately, he still can't find the code, so spends the next few decades just seething. And this is where we join the story. Luke Carter buys the packs off Casey's mother in a binge reminiscing about the card game he played as a kid, finds the game, and from here we already know. Leshy, new game, P03, Great Transcendence, unplugged in his prime. The final piece is that Luke fucked up by contacting Game Funa, alerting Satan to the game's location. Then this bitch turns up, game ends Luke, and takes the disc. But wait, who was this? Well, she's from a game called The Hex. Literally. Go watch Macca Jade's video if you want more context. And that's where we're up to. Anything more will have to wait until a new game is released. Well, actually, there is one final piece. At the end of the ARG, a random string of garbled text was found. However, it is in fact a YouTube video ID. Go check it out, it's not long, I've linked it below. Again, I've had to miss a lot out here for time, so if you want the full details, go play the games yourself. Or failing that, go watch the Macca J video. Whew, okay, welcome back everyone who skipped ahead. Let's talk about modding. Inscription has a small but active modding scene. With the right setup and tools, you can add your own cards into the game, as well as bosses, challenges, and more. In fact, if you want to play me in the game, you can. Linked below. A few months after release, an official mod was added. Called Casey's Mod, it allows you to play through the game with additional challenges and mechanics. You now have specific starter decks, although once you've unlocked the one that lets you start with the Mantis God, you don't really need anything else. The others are still fun to play with and explore deck themes that otherwise would be hard to manage. This is slightly balanced out by the fact that you no longer have death cards when you die. You're just kicked back to the menu and told how many times you fucked up. You have to reach a challenge point threshold, and this will keep increasing. Each challenge is also not made equal. Reducing your backpack by 1 only gives you 5 CP, while having one candle at all times gives you 30. And how about making all the bosses into the bears? There's 50 points in it for you. Good luck! You can now buy the Trapper's Knife, making visiting him not just deck bloat. The game will also track your stats as you progress, such as how many Mantis gods you picked, and takes on the role of that guy and tells you how many times you didn't play perfectly optimal.
Total misplayer.
There is also a hidden achievement for beating it using every challenge at once. Your Mantis god can't save you now. Actually, it still can, if you're one of the few that have actually made it far. Here's a few important things to know. Firstly, the game only autosaves at specific points, usually entering a node. This means it does not save when exiting the menu. No need to believe in the heart of cards, we control the flow of time. Secondly, the game's RNG is entirely deterministic, meaning that what happens
Anything that happens, happens.
will always happen.
Anything that, in happening, causes something else to happen, causes something else to happen.
Don't let the happy campers eat your Mantis. Test the waters with a ringworm. If it's fine, exit and swap it out for the Mantis. If not, well, they're not going to be a problem next time. And remember, goats make great sacrifices, and a smaller deck is a more consistent deck. Combining all of these can finally put you on a level playing field. It's not going to be easy, but give it a go. I really recommend you do. The game is 17 quid, or about 20 bucks, and goes on sale for closer to 10. So pick it up if you have the chance. If you did skip the spoiler section, go sooner rather than later, as the game is better played going in blind. I can say with some certainty that it's the most fun I've had with card games since that one year 9 tried to steal cards off our table and my friend chokeslammed him through said table. Thank you to June for voicing the stoat, and thank you to Tomineitor for the Valk card art. I've linked them both below. Finally, thank you all for watching. I know it's been a while, and this one was a tad longer than I expected. Next video will be sooner, and probably shorter. Join the Discord if you want updates. Finally, I reached the threshold for monetization on this channel, which extrapolating at the current rate should pay for about one night's drinking per 7 months. So double thanks for supporting my alcoholism. Till next time. Oh, this is going to take a while.